Hey everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and as you know, I love coins, but there's so many different types of coins that are out there. Those could be world, and they could be US, they could be ancient, medieval, you could focus on like errors or metals or exonumia, tokens, currency. There's so much out there, varieties. I personally have been sort of dipping my toes in each of the different realms within coin collecting, but today I wanted to take some time to think about US versus world coin collecting in particular. I mean, my collection focuses less on like currency, tokens, exonumia, that sort of stuff, but I do have like one world coin collection, one US coin collection that's really just a few cool coins that I saw, plus like a Dansko typeset, and then I have like a few world coins that's like one of each issuing entity, and then maybe like one or two medieval ones or ancient ones that I just found interesting from a historical perspective. But today's video, I wanted to talk about the big sort of debates, US and world, because some of them have some pros and cons. I think contrasting them is really interesting and something that I just wanted to do. I'd been thinking about it for a while, so I was like, let's make a video. Now, one thing that I've been thinking about is like the best way to lay this out, but I think it's just going to be more of like me saying my thoughts. I have some notes that I prepared about like general topics. I think one of the first ones, and it's not like the best intro necessarily, but the grading and liquidity is very different for both of these categories. So I think one of the big differences is how many coins in the United States are graded versus the world market. And it's still, the world has been a major expansion point for a lot of people, and a lot of the, from a percent factor, maybe I would think that world is catching up quite a bit compared to the US, because for a long time, it really wasn't something that people cared too much about, or it wasn't something that was super accepted within the world coin collecting. I mean, PCGS doesn't even do ancient coins. That's sort of a whole different thing. But from an authenticity perspective and just like what people are used to in the ancient coin realm, but it's still not like a super important thing for the world coins. And I find that interesting, because one of the big things on the US that I think gives it so much of its strength is the ability that people are really bidding strong for coins that they can't see because of the accepted factors of the grades. Whereas I think a lot of the world value, and this is maybe getting into too many points at the same time, but a lot of the value in the world stuff is more like how historic is this, or like how interesting of a coin is this. Maybe there's some eye appeal, and maybe the toning is going to add for some really special coins, but I think a lot of it's like, wow, what is this commemorating in this world coin, this incredible event or small colony that only made a few coins, or limited issuance, and like much stranger and more varied. I'm thinking of some crazy planchets that I once talked about with a guy named Matt Tavery, who's a coin dealer in the world section, whereas the United States, there's a lot more ease of like collecting a set. And I think that that's a really big thing, like the recognizability of like, hey, I'm building a wheat penny set. That's like the classic introductory coin collecting thing to do, is go after that wheat penny set. And that's just so well known, and everybody knows the key dates, or they're easily found out if you want to know them. Whereas with the world, nobody knows on German coins. There's so many different mints. Nobody really has a great working understanding that I'm familiar with of like, oh, hey, like this Pfennig from this year from the Stuttgart Mint is a really good one to be on the lookout for, and it is just a big difference. And I think having like the knowledge, or like I'm building the Morgan dollar set, there's less of like an obvious, there's some 8 reals maybe, or it's like a different, you could do a world crown coin collection, but there's not like one big set I think there's a ton of people after in the world realm, compared to like how common it is to do that on the US side. So when you have as many sight unseen bids for coins that are graded in the States, then you have dealers that can like have the confidence in that market, and more go into them. I think the prices get pushed up because they're so much more investable. Whereas with world coins, I mean, that's another big thing, is like the information. The US coins are much easily, it's something that is more quantified than like these rarities within the world coin collecting spectrum, just because it's so much larger of a field, where the rarity, the relative rarity, the mintages might be tiny, but there's just much less interest because there's so many fewer collectors doing like the competitiveness or like the registry collectors. I actually was at the Whitman Expo. I ran into this really awesome, interesting person that we just chatted for a little while. Maybe I didn't get his contact information because I was working for David Lawrence at that show, but he was like a Swiss 2 francs collector, and he said he's been competing. I think he's the top person in the registry, and I was like fascinated. I thought that is like super, super cool. But I think if there were as many people focused on getting the 2 francs, and he was mentioning there's a few key dates, and he's only going for like the tippy top, unbelievable, nice quality Swiss coins for this. If that was the U.S. or if the same competition was there for the Swiss, there could be still some, I'm sure there's many people in Switzerland who are, or enough that are making it challenging and, having the high 5-figure, maybe low 6-figure sums that this person was talking about. But it was still like, man, imagine if you had the same competition that was for the Morgan dollar. So there's still not I think that registry competition has also been huge for the higher end of U.S. coins, whereas there definitely are registries completely out there. And I think it's been a very smart move by the grading companies to cater to that and offer them for so many of the different categories. But it just hasn't been quite as popular on the world side, and maybe that could be something where there's a bigger runway on the world versus the US. On the other hand, with the US, like having that established presence, and maybe it's just easier that proportionally continues to rise when there might not ever be enough people to really jump into the competitive collecting of world material. And so it's sort of a question of like, how long has it been like that? I personally view the world as super, super cool because you can buy, a 5 franc or like a crown size silver dollar in the States size coin from the early 1800s. If you compare, the drape bust stuff from the States, but even like seated Liberty, which I don't know, kick in probably like 1840 or 1839, something like that. I know there's go-brec dollars, but if you have like a large silver coin from the United States versus what that would cost, in terms of buying some world stuff, it's just a huge difference in terms of the States being so much more expensive. That's like, wow, I can get some phenomenal pieces from around the world that if they were the equivalent coin in the States, it would be so much more expensive. And I think a lot of people see this trade-off and they're saying, hey, I really like the history behind coins, so maybe the world is really good for me. On the other hand, like completing a set of the United States stuff, it's so special because these are sort of regarded as like the kings of the collecting hobby to a lot of people, or at least a lot of like the dealer networks. And I think that it's probably fair to say that the shift or like the focus in coin collecting, where coin collecting is the strongest, would be in the States. But there's certainly different places around the world where that's much, that would probably be disputed, or there's really strong collecting communities. I think the other thing is the information advantage. We're still really catching up with. It's probably just off auction records in terms of the world stuff, but you can get really knowledgeable in United States coins. But if you're able to get super knowledgeable on the world side, I think that there's also huge upside there just from a perspective of, since there's not this super easy, sight unseen bids and all that sort of thing. If you have a really good understanding on the market, you know how to buy, a lot of people probably come into world material in the States, and I know this, dealers get it, and they just really don't know quite as much about it, and they just want to make their profit, get in and out of it, keep turning it over. If you're the person in the world side, it's much, there's a lot more people you could know that are challenging to get in contact with relative to, putting something up on CCE or a major CDHCD, and Facebook is sort of a step below. But anyways, there's a lot of interesting parallels between those where the world, you could just have that information advantage, I would say, and be able to get better margins as well. But again, maybe in a downturn, the world stuff could be tougher to get out of really quickly, and it's contingent on some of the world prosperity. Certainly a big area has been like Asian, especially Chinese, Hong Kong coins. Those have been super, super strong, probably in correlation with the wealth creation at the top levels of those places in the world. But the States has had the same thing. I mean, the U.S. economy could really go down. It's been super strong for a long time, certainly compared with the Great Recession to like Europe. It's been a massive difference in terms of which places have been super strong since then. I think pivoting in a different direction in terms of the ability, though, for the world stuff, not only to be old and cool, but also have a lot of ties to like Ancestry. That's like a big strength of the world coins. A lot of people might say that they're American, but I think, I'm aware I have some Eastern European, some German, some sort of English and Scottish in my background, so I find it interesting to collect from some of those areas, especially for me. Like, I'm a US German citizen, so for me that would look like a lot of the German states coinage, and some of the Polish, sort of Prussian coinage. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff there where I love most of my collection values in the American stuff, but it's not like a tie. If I have a friend, maybe they're French, like it could be a really cool gift to go get them something that's from 1500s in France, and it has again, good eye appeal, but it's not the same as buying like a colonial coin from the States. Or say you're like an ancient history buff, there's not that much. I know there's like Native American history, and that's like super fascinating, but America hasn't existed 1776, and the colonial was certainly not earlier than 1492. And I want to say, is the first colonial stuff like the 1652 dated coins, like the sixpence, I'm not your willow tree shilling, I'm not totally sure exactly, but the point, it's obvious that there's just a huge difference from what's like medieval coinage or the availability of ancient that gets looped in with the world instead of the United States. Kind of obvious, but that's another big pro for the world coins. But I think it's also just really tough to say. It's a lot easier to make it, I would say, as a U.S. dealer, just because of, especially living in the States, certainly. But there's just so many more specialties where the overall piece of the pie that United States takes up, compared to like if you just know French coins, or you just know Austrian, or you just know Slovakian coinage. There's not going to be quite the opportunity that there is in world, and that certainly means that more people get interested in world, and there's more established track record of value. People care about that ultimately as well. But hope that this was some interesting things to think through. I think the last note is that, like, on the really cheap end, you can have cool collections of both types. Now, that could be coin roll hunting in the States, which you're not going to lose any money doing, outside of time and gas maybe. On the world side, you can buy really cheap poundage and then slowly chip away with like $1, $2, $3 coins, dealer bins of like loose world coinage that you can hunt through, maybe find some more rare stuff, maybe just find a coin that is priced at 50 cents that's super neat and eccentric, and you can have a lot of variety in the world collecting spheres. But hope that this was all helpful, and let me know what your thoughts are. There any major parallels or comparisons between the two that I might have missed? Let me know down below in the comments. Thanks for watching the video. I'd encourage you to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated. I've also got Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, so you can follow me there. TreasureTownYT.com is the main channel website. Definitely give that a visit. I've got a lot of information about me up there and the channel. CoinGrabBag.com as well currently redirects there, but it's some good opportunities for very fair grab bags, both made by me and other sellers. A lot of different options, so that's a good way to support. There's also TreasureTownCoins.com. In the future, my coin dealing operation will be done out of that website. CoinMeltPrice.com for updates on the melt prices of your coins, both US and world. A lot of resources in that website. And then CoinsMetalsCards.com, being developed right now as a marketplace and news source for coins, metals, cards, and collectibles in general. So I'll see you on my future videos. Looking forward to seeing you there, and hope you have a good day.